Focus now on how violent crimes should be tackled. Well, one analyst believes that prevention strategies are not working. Guy Lamb is a director of the Safety and Violence Initiative at the University of Cape Town, and he's calling for greater focus on limiting childhood experiences of violence. He says this will help prevent children becoming abusers themselves in future. Well, Guy Lamb joins me now from our Cape Town studios. Mr. Lamb, thank you very much for your time. So talk to us about this prevention strategy that you say will help prevent future crimes from being committed, in particular by boy children. Where are you coming from with this? Talk to us more about it.
Good morning, and thank you so much for hosting me. I mean, the point comes from there's been a lot of work done on violent crime within South Africa, particularly interpersonal crime. And one of the sort of common factors that tends to cut across many of the perpetrations of violent crime, but also those who are victims of violent crime, is that they've experienced some form of child abuse or child trauma. Often it's physical violence, sometimes it's emotional violence, sometimes sexual violence, but a kind of a cross-cutting issue as a kind of a key driver of particularly perpetration of violent crime, including domestic violence, men's violence against women later on in life. A key driver of that actually is an experience of violence as children. Now, an issue within South Africa we have is a lot of investment and focuses on the police in terms of fighting crime. And, you know, the police have a very important role to play, but they are typically a reaction type of agency within government. They can do prevention in the sense of visible policing, that they put police on the streets to try and prevent certain types of crime from happening. But when we've seen sort of recent cases in Polokwane, the recent Babes Odumo case, where it is, you know, specific types of violence, where it's a male perpetrator or male perpetrators who are committing violent acts, often there is a history of violence, that they have experienced violence as children. And so there's a lot of good work that's said that if we're going to do something and we're going to try and prevent this problem having a long-term focus, we do need to spend more time and devote more resources to children. So the issue is very much around a need for a focus and a need for other government departments to work together on this particular issue, particularly Department of Social Development. More resources need to go there to work with families that are at risk where children may be experiencing violence.
Guy Lamb, you've written recently an opinion piece on the issue of crime in South Africa, and right now the issue of gender-based violence is firmly in the spotlight. Of course, you have the Babes Odumo case this week. Last week you had cases of ANC leaders being accused of sexual harassment and rape. Talk to us about the prevention strategies that South African law enforcement is employing, because you don't seem to have a lot of good things to say about.
Well, I mean, the issue is that there's actually very little that the South African police can do to prevent that type of violence. What they can be doing in the sense of is proper investigation. So there's the kind of work the police can do after the fact. And there often are challenges around that where the police don't necessarily take cases that seriously. We've seen recently that certainly the Minister of Police and the National Commissioner of Police have said that this is a priority issue, particularly men's violence against women and violence against children, and they will prioritize this. But sort of research has shown that it varies across areas, that when complainants come to the police don't take them that seriously. There's also issues around the nature in which evidence is collected and the dockets are prepared and whether they actually are court ready or not. Those play particular roles in kind of the conviction of perpetrators. But the issue around trying to prevent men's violence against women is often an issue that, because this type of violence takes place often behind closed doors. The police have no role to play in that. The issue here is around, it's particularly about personal gender norms that perpetrators have, that they feel that women are inferior to them, that they need to control women, and if women do things that they don't like, they need to discipline them, they need to punish them and use violence to do that. So the issue here is around, you know, I think important role players, particularly amongst sort of traditional leaders, amongst kind of key political role players and individuals within South Africa, you know, can play an important role in terms of promoting, you know, kind of pro-social, pro-equal masculinity in South Africa. There are issues around kind of members of the public doing bystander interventions, and we've heard recently with the Wadumo case that the kind of her father did try to intervene, so tried to do a bystander intervention. So there's kind of issues very much around there's only certain things that the police can do, but also the society needs to play a role. But there's issues around, going back to my previous point about violence against children. It's if we're focusing on children and the sort of traumas and violence that they're experiencing in the home, if we can prevent that, then we stand a very good chance of reducing men's violence against women later on in life.
Just as a final point, I wanted to explore with you, Mr. Lamb, talk to us about the societal pressures as well, because you're saying that there's a lot that happens there that feeds into this culture of violence in South Africa, and it's actually something that you picked up also from the president's speech.
I mean, the president himself has certainly devoted quite a lot of time to dealing with gender-based violence, men's violence against women. He was at the National Summit. He certainly made all the right noises, said all the right things. The issue really is around implementation. On the issue of kind of societal approaches here is, I mean, within South Africa, the one thing we've noticed in sort of gender-based violence is that sort of gender norms that are held by men cuts across class and race. So you'll get poor and wealthy men, black and white men in South Africa holding these kind of unequal gender norms and feeling that they're entitled to women, they're entitled to control women's lives. I think issues around key stakeholders need to come together to kind of discuss this and say, well, actually, in the environment in which we're in, the sort of the patriarchal norms no longer are valid. We're not living in a society where men do the work. We're sitting in situations where, kind of women are earning salaries often more than men. Women do perform many roles they weren't performing 30, 40 years ago. And it's an issue around that the norms that are held by many men don't conform to a culture of equality that does exist in South Africa.
All right, Guy Lamb, thank you very much for talking to us. He is a director of the Safety and Violence Initiative at the University of Cape Town.